The discovery hit like a storm, unexpected, overwhelming, and relentless. 20 years of marriage unraveled in the blink of an eye, leaving me grappling with the weight of betrayal. My wife, my partner since high school, had shattered the foundation of trust we'd built over decades. It started innocently enough, through a reunion with her college friends. A casual dinner turned into an evening of laughter, nostalgia, and seemingly harmless banter. But amidst the warmth of shared memories, an offhand comment from a former roommate shifted the mood entirely. The roommate, with an almost playful tone, began recounting a tale that my wife abruptly shut down. Her reaction was sharp, too sharp, and in that moment, unease crept into my mind like a whisper in the dark. Suspicion gnawed at me. Was there something more behind her discomfort? To clear the air, I gently brought up the timeline of our relationship, emphasizing how we'd been together through her entire college experience. What followed was an uncomfortable silence, as if my words had disturbed an unspoken truth. As the evening wound down, one of her friends approached me quietly. The advice was simple yet shattering: you need to have an honest conversation with your wife about her college years. The ride home was a blur of tension and unresolved questions. When I broached the subject with her, she dismissed my concerns, brushing them off as if they were insignificant. But I couldn't let it go. The dismissive attitude, the defensiveness, it all pointed to something bigger. That night, I took a stand, leaving for my brother's house until she was ready to talk. The next day, her demeanor shifted. She came to me, nervous and uneasy, and finally confessed. The truth was far worse than I had imagined. During our long-distance phase in her early college years, she had been unfaithful, not with one person, but with several. At least 10 men, she admitted, including some she had introduced to me during my weekend visits. One of them, she revealed, was still a part of our social circle. The revelation hit me like a tidal wave. The betrayal wasn't just in the actions, but in the layers of deception that followed. I felt anger, sadness, and a deep sense of humiliation. Her attempts to downplay her infidelity, to write it off as a youthful indiscretion in a relationship she didn't think would last, only fueled my sense of betrayal. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment, it was a calculated disregard for our relationship. I initiated the divorce immediately, my resolve firm despite the voices around me urging forgiveness. Her family, my family, they all argued that the history we shared, the life we built, was worth salvaging. But how could I overlook years of deceit? How could I erase the memory of her introducing me to the very men she'd been unfaithful with, parading them as friends without a hint of guilt? Trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to restore, especially when met with denial and dismissal. Even our children, though nearly adults at 17 and 19, couldn't be shielded from the fallout. I hoped they would understand my decision. This wasn't about anger or revenge, it was about reclaiming my dignity. Everywhere I turned, I felt like I was fighting against a tide of voices urging me to let it go, to focus on the good times. But the good times now felt like a facade, tainted by the knowledge of what lay beneath. Her persistent insistence that her actions were normal for a long-distance relationship left me feeling gaslit. Was I overreacting? Was I being unreasonable? I questioned myself, doubted my feelings, but the pain was undeniable. The night spent wondering how she could maintain friendships with those men, how she could act as if nothing had happened, haunted me. The weight of the lies, the casual way she disregarded my feelings, and the lack of genuine remorse created an insurmountable divide. She didn't just betray me, she dismissed the very foundation of our marriage. And now, as I face the daunting process of unraveling 2 decades of life together, I'm left with one unshakable truth: I deserve better than a life built on lies. We were absolutely exclusive at the time, no doubt about it. Back then, dating culture was nothing like it is now. Over 20 years ago, exclusivity wasn't something you had to explicitly state, it was simply understood. There weren't widespread notions of casual relationships or open arrangements. If you were with someone, you were with them alone. Before she left for college, we had one of the most intense conversations of my life. We discussed whether we could maintain our relationship over long distances. It wasn't easy, but she was resolute, adamant, even, that we stay together. She even joked, half serious, about her father coming after me if I so much as thought about being with another girl. That joke carried weight, the kind of weight that told me she meant every word. Then came my senior prom. She couldn't come because of her college commitments, and I figured going with a platonic friend was a harmless idea. But when I mentioned it to her, she was visibly upset. The hurt in her voice, the way she reacted, it left no room for doubt about how much our relationship meant to her. In the end, I didn't go at all. Instead, I spent the night talking with her, making her feel reassured. While we might not have thrown the word exclusive around explicitly, everything, our conversations, our actions, the very essence of our bond, made it clear we were committed to one another. And yet, despite everything, a friend recently urged me to confront the truth head-on. When I followed up, they confirmed my worst fears. 10 guys was a conservative estimate. There was also talk of a pregnancy scare during those years, something I had never been told. But the numbers? They weren't the most painful part. What truly crushed me was her complete inability to understand the depth of her betrayal. If she had shown even a shred of genuine remorse or an ounce of effort to make things right, I might have reconsidered. But she didn't. Throughout every conversation, she brushed off my feelings, insisting I was overreacting to what she dismissed as normal behavior. The moment she realized I was serious about divorce, her tone shifted. Defensive. Angry. But even then, it was clear, her concern wasn't about the pain she'd caused me. It was about the consequences she'd face. I couldn't ignore the lack of genuine regret. She offered no real solutions, no path forward. When I told her I'd already contacted a lawyer, her response wasn't to apologize or suggest counseling. It was pure damage control. That was the moment I knew this marriage couldn't be salvaged. Thankfully, our kids are older now, and I've spent years saving for their college expenses. Financially, we're both stable, so there shouldn't be any major hurdles. I'm open to therapy, not to save what's left of our marriage, but to help us co-parent effectively and find closure. For now, I've taken initial steps towards separation. My lawyer drafted a preliminary agreement, which I sent to her via certified mail. It's not a full divorce filing yet, but it sets the wheels in motion. The night of that dinner with her friends, on the 26th, I went straight to my brother's house. I needed space to think. Over the next several days, I tried to communicate with her, hoping for some acknowledgement of my feelings. But her dismissive attitude left no room for compromise. By the end of the week, I had no choice but to take action. Even now, we're not officially divorced. In my state, there's no formal legal concept of separation, but I've made it crystal clear, this process is happening. I emphasized to my children, with all the sincerity I could muster, that we were in therapy, for them. This wasn't just about navigating the intricacies of a divorce, it was about ensuring we handled this seismic shift in the best way possible for our family's well-being. I made it crystal clear that they could always come to me, no matter what. If they needed to talk about their fears, their frustrations, or their sadness, whether it was with me, their mother, or a therapist, I was here for them. They needed to know that their emotions were not just valid but vital, and their mental health was an absolute priority. Together, as a family, we would find a way through this. Discussions with a mediator had already begun, setting the groundwork for a peaceful separation. Unless something drastically changed, the path forward seemed amicable. We were both financially stable, unburdened by major debts, and, with the kids being older, custody battles didn't loom over us like a storm cloud. Still, the past few months had been grueling. Yet, amidst the chaos, I found a peculiar gratitude. The overwhelming response to my last post validated my feelings in a way I hadn't anticipated. That encouragement pushed me to seek counseling, not just for myself but alongside my wife. It was an attempt, however late, to salvage something, or at least to part ways with understanding. But my daughter, my 19-year-old, carried her own wounds into this unraveling. She had faced her share of heartbreak, boyfriends who had betrayed her trust or abandoned her for someone else. Those experiences had hardened her perspective, shaping a lens through which she viewed the world and, unfortunately, me. When she saw me leaving the family home, her mind leapt to the worst conclusion, that I must have been the one who cheated. Her past had taught her to expect betrayal, and now, unfairly, I bore the weight of that assumption. Her suspicion, though painful, made sense in the context of her life. When the topic of infidelity came up, my wife didn't shy away. She admitted that she was the one who had been unfaithful. Despite the sting of her confession, I wasn't particularly concerned about controlling the narrative. From what I could gather, she hadn't spoken ill of me to our kids. Still, the swiftness of her readiness to move on stung. Within 6 weeks, after only a handful of counseling sessions, she was prepared to file for a joint, amicable divorce. Her ease in leaving behind 20 years of marriage was a reality I struggled to come to terms with. I couldn't shake the feeling that she had already started looking for someone new. During one of our mediation sessions, the topic of fidelity came up. The mediator made it clear, we were still married until the divorce was finalized, and any romantic involvement before then could jeopardize the amicable terms we were striving for. The irony wasn't lost on me, considering that infidelity had already fractured our marriage. My wife's visible annoyance at this revelation only added to the complexity of our sessions. For now, I'm staying in the guest room, a situation that seems to be hindering her ability to fully move on. But at the end of the day, I'm doing my best to accept the reality of our separation. Therapy has become my anchor, guiding me through the storm. It's helping me prepare for the possibility of seeing her with someone new. I'm holding on to the hope that I'll find my own place before the divorce is finalized. If everything proceeds smoothly, summer will bring not just the end of our marriage but the start of a new chapter for us both.